Welcome back to Behind the Headlines. This year, Missouri became the first state nationwide to tax income but eliminate the capital gains tax from that income tax. A report by the Institute on Tax and Economic Policy, ITEP, predicts that Missouri could be challenged by some budget shortfalls sooner rather than later. Kaylee Kern with the Beacon Independent News Service in Kansas City looked into all of this and joins us now. Welcome back, Kaylee, and we always glad to have you here.
Hi, always glad to be here.
Thank you. So let's start with what is the capital gains tax and who will benefit most from it because they won't have to pay it, and how?
Yes, so capital gains are profits made from selling assets, think stocks or real estate. So normally when you sell those assets and you make a profit, you would have to pay a tax on that income as you would any other income. But now that tax has been completely eliminated. So any income you make from selling assets will be exempted from income tax. And according to that report that you mentioned, cutting taxes on capital gains will overwhelmingly benefit Missouri's millionaires who tend to own more of those assets. And they estimate that the average millionaire will save about $43,000 a year from this tax cut, while the average non-millionaire will save closer to $80 a year.
$80, okay. So Governor Kehoe called eliminating the capital gains tax pro-growth. So what's the thinking, that everyone will benefit with, to use a Reaganomics phrase, trickle down here?
Yes, exactly. So the belief of the governor, as well as other proponents of this policy, is that cutting this and other taxes will help to attract more people and more businesses to the state because they won't have to pay as many taxes as they would in other states. And so the governor and others have pointed to other states that have been cutting taxes in recent years and arguing that that Missouri needs to do the same in order to be competitive or risk being left behind. And while this cut will initially just cut capital gains for individuals, it will also in a few years cut capital gains taxes for corporations as well. And the belief there is that allowing businesses to keep more of their money will help them reinvest back in their communities, create more jobs, and drive economic growth.
So the income tax, as we mentioned earlier, was not cut for regular folks. So does that suggest that there are winners and losers, given that Missouri is not populated with a large number of large companies right now?
Yes, that is certainly the belief of a researcher that I spoke with from the Institute on Tax and Economic Policy. He said that historically, lawmakers across the aisle have generally been in agreement that more broad-based tax policies are better than targeting particular groups and potentially creating an uneven playing field. One of the examples that he mentioned was that in Missouri, under this new tax cut, someone who works a more regular job and makes a modest income will continue to pay income taxes, while someone who makes a larger income on capital gains, think cryptocurrency or stocks, will not have to pay that because their income is now tax exempt. And then as for that larger company aspect, that researcher said that the companies that tend to benefit the most from a cut like this are larger multinational corporations that don't have as much of a footprint in Missouri, which means that a lot of those savings that they'll be enjoying as a result of this cut are going to go to shareholders outside of the state.
So even before the capital gains tax was cut, the Missouri Office of Administration was predicting budget shortfalls coming soon. How much of a shortfall, and also how did the governor and others in supporting this in the legislature justify going ahead?
Yes, so the Office of Administration has predicted that the state will face a $1 billion shortfall next fiscal year. And that's due to a couple of factors, one of which is that COVID-era funding from the federal government has been pretty much drained at this point. And so the governor pointed to this impending shortfall as a reason to cut this year's budget by $2 billion, but the state is still looking at a shortfall next year unless spending is cut or revenue is increased. And the governor acknowledged this in his press release announcing that he was signing this new tax cut into law, but he said that it was still important to put money back in the pockets of hardworking Missourians and drive growth that way. And as for how much of an impact this cut will have on the budget, it's still very unclear because estimates for how much revenue the state will be losing as a result of the cut have ranged from $100 million to $600 million per year. And even government estimates have ranged wildly. So it's really unclear at this point how much of an impact it'll have.
So here's kind of a bigger question, bigger picture question, Kaylee. So with the White House and also congressional Republicans saying to the states, don't count on as much funding from Washington in the future, what is likely to be the bottom line here?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And this cut came at a really interesting time
Hmm.
because, like you said, the Trump administration and its allies in Congress have for the past few months been working to shift the cost of programs like Medicaid and SNAP to the states. And that puts Missouri in a particularly interesting position because a few years ago, Missouri voters put Medicaid expansion in the state constitution, which means the state is constitutionally required to
Hmm.
provide those services to that larger population. But without the federal funding that it's relied on in the past, the state is facing potential $1 to $2 billion more in costs per year for Medicaid and SNAP alone. And it's unclear at this point where the state is planning to get that money.
All right, we will leave it there for now, and we will see what happens. Kaylee Curran with the Beacon News Service in Kansas City joining us today. You can read Kaylee's report and other Beacon reporters' stories online and on social media, as well as see this conversation at ky3.com, also on our KY3 News app, Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV+. Thanks, Kaylee. We'll always look forward to next time. Glad you could join us.
Thank you so much, Steve.